Sorry, I was going through the mountains. Um, I'm not sure where we left off, but I was saying that there's a lot of songs for this record, and I think I'll put it this way, not to be overly cryptic because I don't even know what the future holds exactly yet, but there are more songs than can fit in your standard sized album. But I do think that next year is a year of more music coming than I've ever put out in any one year. So thank you for that, Karen. Trish Needs a Holiday, which is a fantastic alias, asks, is there a story behind the album title? And yeah, it actually comes from a poem that I wrote, which I thought was a song at first, and I started to sort of write it in the form of a poem. And yeah, in the end of this, sort of each end of the stanza was the endless search for everything. And I just loved the search for everything because that's really sort of what my career has been. It's what my life has been. It's the way that my mind works, is to sort of consume everything, you know. And so that is very true to the nature of the record, which is sort of like a mixtape of all the music that inspires me and all the styles that I've made before, but sort of in my own certain way of doing it. So thank you. Trish Needs a Holiday. Are we still live? Are we going? We're rocking. Rocking on the live feed. Carrie Freeman asks, how has playing and touring with Dead and Company influenced your sound? Can't wait. You know, I think the experience and the ongoing experience with Dead and Company will sort of bear itself more in the way that the live shows go than the records go. I do kind of have my own universe of songwriting that I don't think is going to change all that much, although I do believe that the sort of extended approach to playing music will sort of find its way and has found its way into the music. I think it's when I play live that you're going to see a lot of that ethic come into play, because my experience with Dead and Company is some of the best live experience I've ever had on stage because of the way in which the crowd interacts with the band and vice versa. And the way in which taking the stage is not so much a star-based experience and more a communal thing with the music. And I've never been more free in a lot of ways on stage than with Dead and Company, and I'm going to definitely borrow as much of that feeling as possible and put it into the live shows. So thank you. Denny Burton, John Mayer, my man. Danny, you're my man too. In regards to the songwriting on this album, which of your songs or albums does it feel most like? What similar emotions or drives went into writing? So I feel like on every record up until this one, the record was a result of a love affair or an obsession that I'd sort of thrown myself into with a certain style of music. So I was writing music at the time I was also discovering it. And that's what's so great about growing up in this time, is that the day you come online as a person with their own tastes and interests in music, you've got a lot of catching up to do, and the catching up is really fun. It takes decades to catch up. And so for me, I was always discovering music and using that excitement as a listener and processing it into being a writer. And what's cool about this record is that I didn't do that this time, and it's more its own creation. I think as an artist, you get to a certain point in your career where you're actually, the training wheels come off and you're you. And this is a record that is fully me. I'm borrowing from my own sound, finally. I think that's sort of what describes being an artist who's sort of matured, is you borrow from your own sound. And so that's what's different about this record. Beyond that, I never really set out with a mission statement. It's more like just start writing and listen to what the music tells you to do. And it's very big in scope. The Search for Everything is not the wrong title for a record with this much music and this different style of music from song to song. So thank you, Danny, my man. Micah writes, which one do you enjoy the most, composing, recording, or performing? I enjoy the moment right in between composing and recording, where you're in the studio and you woke up and it was just like any other day where you're just a hunter. You wake up, and songwriters know this. 99% of the time, you go home with nothing. And I would proffer that a lot of the talent of being a songwriter lies in the skill of going home with nothing and not being too discouraged and waking up the next day and going out hunting again for a song. And so my favorite part is where you wake up in the morning and it's just like any other morning where you get dressed and you go to work and you try to find a song, and then you do, and something happens and you realize, oh, we're going to be here for a minute. And everything that I'm about to do is about to get frozen in time in a song. And you kind of go into a trance. And that happened with Love on the Weekend for sure, where I was playing a different guitar part for an overdub, and all of a sudden this riff came out and I went, please press record. And all of a sudden it went into bullet time. That's my favorite thing to do, is to come home that night with something that I didn't know existed before and hear it almost like, I don't know, there's not really a metaphor that's going to directly work for it, but it's like being introduced to a child you didn't know you had and just sitting down and going like, so, you're mine, huh? So, how's life? So, I'm your dad, you know, and so that's my favorite thing to do. And songwriters will understand that, you know. You're like, I'm your mom, or I'm your dad. Thank you. Andy, Panda Kim writes, do you ever listen to a song you made a long time ago and have chills because you feel the nostalgia about a specific instance that may have nothing to do with what the song's about? Can you describe that moment and song? I don't know that there's any one song, but I definitely, every once in a while, will listen back to a record. I mean, it happens very, very rarely. And I listen back to it and I go, oh, there's that guy. And I tend to listen back with a certain amount of compassion for myself, because when you're making a record, you're working through something. And it feels like the only thing that matters, because it is the only thing that matters, because you are in present day when you write that record and you're dealing with whatever comes your way. And to listen back to it with compassion and go, like, as I get older, I listen back and I go, oh, that kid, you know, and I go, all right, you're a good kid, you know. So I would say that, like, the songs on Continuum remind me of a certain love of life while I was living in Los Angeles and riding my bike down Venice Beach and listening to songs that I was working on, and that moment of discovery. It was also a very innocent time. It was very cool. And then I listened to Born and Raised not long ago, which, by the way, I'm very pleased, I'll say that, when I see people put Born and Raised at the top of their favorite albums list of mine, because it means that that record got picked up, because I didn't get to tour on it, obviously, and I always felt kind of worried that it would disappear. And it hasn't, because certain people realize that that's a very deep record. And I listened back to it not long ago. I think I had to learn a song off of it, and I just like relearn a song off of it because I didn't really tour with it so much. And I listened back to Born and Raised and I went, wow, that's, you know, that was a weird time, but I have a record to show for it. And we all go through weird times. We all go through times where you just can't get it together no matter what you do. And there are times where you can't lose no matter what you do. And artists get records out of them, you know. So I get to go back into Born and Raised and go, wow, Whiskey, Whiskey, Whiskey was really honest, you know. So now I could also go back and listen to songs and go, yeah, no, that didn't work. But you don't want to hear me tell you what those are, because they might be your favorite songs, and I'm not in to raining on my own parade. So thank you.